My name is Shamari McCrimmons. I am a seed investor, a co-founder, if you will, of a car wash company called Dirty Dogs Car Wash. We've expanded to 10 locations throughout the Southeast in Georgia, Alabama, and Florida. For me, my personal journey is, I tell people all the time, I'm not a guy that had some great idea in my daddy's basement at 19 as an entrepreneur, right? We didn't even have a basement, so that was impossible just from the beginning. I didn't make my journey into entrepreneurship till I was in my 40s, much older than anyone in here, obviously. But I wasn't into it, and I got into it in my 40s. So it was a bit of a late start. Prior to that, I worked over 20 years in corporate America in various jobs, associations, nonprofits, and corporate. And quite frankly, it was good. It was a great opportunity, made some great connections, made good money, great benefits. I met my wonderful wife at the job, so that was good. That was a good takeaway from that. But overall, not to sound too kind of cheesy, something was missing. It was an opportunity that was missing, and I know a lot of people here can appreciate this. You kind of have ready for that next step in your career. You're making that next move, and you need more development, or you don't have this particular certification, or you don't have this particular work experience, and that was hitting me in the face. So in my early 40s, I made a decision to go into entrepreneurship with some close partners of mine and develop this brand. And we've been able to expand rapidly through private equity, SBA loans, and a number of tools that I'm happy to discuss with all of you today. Thank you.
All right. Let's give it up for Shamari. Camille, same question.
So, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming, and thank you for having me. My name is Camille Glover, and my journey is as an attorney. So I grew up in a home. My father was an attorney, and he began his career starting in sort of the government and then went into the corporate America sector. And so he worked for a company called Digital Equipment Corporation, which some of you may or may not remember. It was the #2 computer and software company in the world under IBM. They've been acquired, and they are now considered a part of HP. I started my legal career in banking law, and so that was during the financial crisis. A fun and interesting time to begin. But what it taught me was not only about banking law itself, it taught me about corporate social responsibility. And so through my journey, I'm now serving as a general counsel, but I also serve on a board of a credit union, which is Digital's credit union, which is known as DCU. Digital Credit Union is what it's called. And it's currently undergoing a merger. So the end of the merger, it will be in the top 5 credit unions with close to a $30 billion valuation. I share that because credit unions are one of the ways entrepreneurs can begin their journey, because in a credit union, you are a member as opposed to a client, and you have an actual stake in what happens in the organization. And they also tend to have little to no fees, because a lot of traditional banks, if you're starting out and you really don't have a lot of capital, you're paying fees, and sometimes those fees can actually thwart or cause problems to you growing your business. So I'm not saying this is the only method, but credit unions are one way as you're building capital and getting support, because they really are invested in the communities that they serve. Additionally, when I was in banking law, I worked for large corporations, financial planning organizations, and Fortune 100 companies. And so I helped them, particularly after the financial crisis, to make sure that the financial institutions, which were largely larger banks, understood the issues that allowed them to get into the predatory lending that led to many people that look like us in this room losing their homes and sometimes their businesses. And so a lot of banks have done a lot in modern times to improve access to capital for people that look like all of us, but they have a long way to go. So I continue to try to help financial institutions understand their responsibility to communities, particularly the underserved communities. And so I also will say that the home that I grew up in, I would consider my father somewhat risk-averse in terms of full-time entrepreneurship, but what he did and what I also encourage other people to do, if you do have the corporate job and you don't want to go full-time into entrepreneurship, is to serve as an investor. in someone's business. That's a way for you to kind of dip your feet in while still keeping your good, corporate job or your business, and to help other businesses. And I know this will be a later question, but I'll end with this. As we move into other ways of finding capital, and there's a lot of communication about whether, as a company grows, should you sell or not. And one thing I say is, when you sell, it's okay if you are then investing in other startups.
I like that. Let's give it up for Camille. Catherine, same question.
So hi, everyone. I'm Catherine Latoya Grant Austin. Yes, all 4 names. I go by the Queen Treasurer, so I have been in the industry for over 20 plus years. I am a business owner, so I am the CEO and founder of Art Financial Solutions, where we help businesses go from being passionately poor to purposefully profitable so that they can build the business that they envision and live the life that they desire. And we've been in business since 2011. We actually started off as a financial literacy company because, as you know, right, we love to serve. And we quickly found that there was so much more to being able to educate. But from the age of 16, I have been in banking and finance. And so I started working at a bank at the age of 16. And last year, I transitioned out of the corporate realm as a corporate executive for Stanley Black & Decker, governing all of their global cash. And one of the reasons I did that was because I truly feel like we all have purpose. And when God gives us a gift, you can't tell him no. And you have to honor your word. And so I had heart surgery and a brain injury. And my prayer was, have I done enough? And if I haven't, allow me to make impact. And so I am doing just that. And so I took the corporate fundamentals of corporations, how we strategize money, how we determine if we're going to acquire, how we divest. I took all of those strategies, automation, technology, and I literally poured it into the business so that small business owners such as you and I can grow our businesses to feed our community, feed our soul, and walk in our purpose.
Love that. Let's give it up for Catherine. I probably should have said that, again, my name is Daryl Johnson. I'm the founder and CEO of Ideation to Valuation. I've been around diverse suppliers for about 20 years. I worked for the National Minority Supplier Development Council. At one point, I was president of that council. I have the largest accelerator right now in the country with the NMSDC and Rutgers University as partners. And I've seen lots and lots and lots of you all go from nothing to just talking to a friend of mine. He'll do $700 million this year. So everybody in here, in my mind, is a $100 million business. Is that okay? Is it okay to do $100 million? Is that going to be all right? I say that because I talked to a gentleman the other day, and he was telling me why he was not able. He was trying to get to $1 million, and he just couldn't get to $1 million. And I said, well, what do you think is stopping you? And he started naming marketing and all these kinds of things. And I said, do you deserve to be a $100 million business? He said, I think so. I said, well, if there's a guy in front giving out $1 million businesses, and I walk up and I say, I'd like $1 million business, and they say, do you deserve one? And I say, yeah, and they give me one. But you walk up and they say, would you like a $100 million business? And you say, I think so? There's a lot of things going on upstairs sometimes that prevent us from getting the success that we want. There's also some things that we do that prevent us from getting the funding that we want. Catherine, I think this is a good question for you. What are some of the mistakes that entrepreneurs make when they're seeking funding? And then what advice do you have for them to avoid it?
So one of the things, probably one of the top things when entrepreneurs are seeking funding that they make the mistake is that you're not ready for the funding, mentally as well as on paper, right? So I always talk about automated financials. You have to be able to pull your financials, be able to pivot, be able to give the funder, the bank, or whomever is looking to invest into you. You have to be able to give them your numbers. And you also have to know your numbers. So there's nothing worse than sitting in front of a bank and they're asking you questions and you're like, oh, I don't know, right? You may have a forecast, but you don't truly understand what those numbers are. So I always say, make sure that it doesn't matter if you're making $2, it doesn't matter if you're making 200,000, it doesn't matter if you're making 2 million. Get automated financials, right? Automated financials is like QuickBooks or some type of accounting software. Make sure that your bank accounts are separated from your personal. And so that's what I mean when I say automated financials. Because what happens, right? Money loves speed, y'all. Money loves speed. So if you have an opportunity in front of you and they're like, hey, can you give me your balance sheet and your P&L and your cash flow and give me a forecast, and you go and you're trying to put all of that in a spreadsheet and you're trying to figure it all out, and 2 weeks later, right, you want to come back with that information, that person, that investor or whatnot may be on, how you doing, queen? That person or investor might be on to the next, right? So you want to be ready. I always say stay ready so you don't have to get ready. But financials are a big piece. In addition to that, understand your business in and out, right? Like, so we know we go into business, we have a vision, we know that we want to make money, but what does that really look like? If your business model is solely dependent on you, that means that your business cap is your capacity. And so at the end of the day, if you do not have a plan to show to your investor, to show to the bank or whomever how you're going to be able to scale and grow that business using numbers that you have now, using historical knowledge if you've been in business for a little bit, or just using a business plan, right, to sell the story, then you are not prepared. So again, from a what do I suggest? Automated financials from the beginning. Set your business up so that it does not have to run solely on you. Yes, you are going to make sure that you fund the dream. You're going to make sure that you have the energy. You're going to make sure that you put in the effort. But that is for now. It's not for later. And so you have to build for the future business, the future you, and not today. And always think of it that way.
Love that answer. Definitely love that answer. Some people say if you know better, you do better. Well, in order for you to know better, you have to take in knowledge. And what we've tried to do is impart the most knowledge. In fact, we found some more knowledge, so we just added more knowledge to the stage. And Shannon Herbert, if you wouldn't mind answering a question that everybody else has already answered, it was basically, can you share basically from your personal, professional journey how you actually connect to the topic?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. It sounds like I got here at just the right time.
Perfect time. Perfect time.
So I'm Shannon Herbert. I'm the CEO of the Washington Area Community Investment Fund. We are a CDFI. How many folks here know what a CDFI is? Excellent, excellent. Well, a CDFI is a community development financial institution. So we are not a traditional bank. We're an alternative lender. We provide capital in the form of lending. We provide grants. We sometimes combine those loans and grants, but we also provide really intense technical assistance and business advisory and coaching services for our small businesses and entrepreneurs. WAKIF, as we are affectionately called, is also unique in that we have a co-working space in the heart of Anacostia. So if you've ever been to the Anacostia Arts Center, and you go downstairs in the basement, we have the Hive, and that's our co-working space for entrepreneurs in the DMV. So really nice to be here today. And so my connection to all of this is I give you the money. I'm the one with the money. And I've been working with small businesses in the community for the last 2 decades with larger banks, and now leading a CDFI that is specifically tailored to work with small businesses and entrepreneurs. We are a team of entrepreneurs. Many of us own our own small businesses, and so we know what that journey looks like. But we also understand the challenges that come with trying to access capital, trying to tell your story, understanding what banks need. I was a former chief credit officer, so I was the one saying yes and no and writing policy and making sure that folks are doing the right thing when you came to the bank to apply for loans. But more importantly, our job is to pull the curtain back behind the underwriting. What happens when you get all your documents together and you give them to the lender? What happens? What do they do with them? And so, you know, that's part of that technical advisory and assistance that we offer, is not just helping you with your marketing plans and your financial management, but really helping you feel comfortable with the process, because we know it's scary. We know that it's not as clear as it could be. And so that's our job, into helping you understand what happens next and what to do with your capital once you get it.
Thank you, Shannon. Let's give it up for Shannon. Shamari, I'm gonna just go ahead. Now that we have an orange president, and given these economic pressures, what are some non-traditional or even overlooked forms of capital that we should be looking into or exploring?
All right. So one thing I want to say is that in building the business I'm part of, we've used a number of different ways to raise capital. We've done the traditional bootstrapping, which is just a fancy way of taking money out your pocket and putting it into your business. We've done SBA, we've done private equity, and we've also done traditional banking loans. So I do want to talk about a couple of different options. Some we've done, some we haven't done. We have some great experts here on some non-traditional things. The SBA loans, we have done the standard kind of SBA 7A. We used an SBA loan 7A for 2 of our locations for the build out. That included real estate. Kind of the parameters there is up to $5 million combined, up to like a 25-year payback period, et cetera, et cetera. But one thing I do want to talk about specifically is, because a lot of small entrepreneurs don't think they're big enough or large enough to go into the SBA, but there's a lot of opportunity, especially with the micro loan program. The micro loan program are for entrepreneurs, and those entrepreneurs are looking for funding up to $50,000. Last year, the average micro loan provided by the SBA was $13,000. That's to give you some perspective of the types of dollars that are out there. Usually have a 7-year payback period. Interest rates right now range from roughly 8 to 13% on that money from what's out there right now. I do want to warn you, we brought it the administration, so I do have to address this. There have been some changes very recently in SBA loan lending standards. This happened in June of 2025. Long story short, is tougher, as you may expect. A couple of the key things is that, first of all, any business that goes through an SBA loan program now has to be 100% citizen owned. And there's some other parameters to that, like you could be a naturalized citizen, some other things like that. But you know where I'm going with this, right? It has to be 100% citizen owned in general. There also now is a floor of a 10% equity injection. Prior to that, there were some opportunities to get equity injections for less than that, but now the floor is 10%. And there are also stricter collateral processes. So you may have to put up more money up front as collateral in these loans. That said, I still think SBA and those types of programs are really good. There's a personal story. We were open during the pandemic, and quite frankly, we worked well with the SBA during the pandemic. There were some great opportunities, and when those types of disaster issues happen, it is good to have federal backing. So I want you to take all of this with a grain of salt. One other thing I will bring up, angel investing. That's become very popular since 2020. There are a number of angel investors out there that have really grown since 2020. A gentleman by the name of Rich Dennis, you may have known the name, you know his brand, Shea Moisture, which they sold to Unilever some time ago. Some people are a little bit upset about that, but nonetheless, he made a lot of money. And he's putting it back in. He has a fund. There's another fund called I think it's called BAG. I get the exact name of it, but it's about bringing together minority angel investors, Black Angel Investment Group, I think is what the acronym stands for. And these have gained a lot of popularity. And the good thing about angel investing is the majority of time they are non-dilutive in that they don't take a percentage of your business for the money, which is good. One thing you do have to be careful about with grants and even angel investments is they may be taxable. So keep those things in mind when you're looking at your alternative funding options.
Good, 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 good. One of the things I noticed in our accelerator is the banks won't qualify your business model. They will fund a mess. You think because they gave you the money, I must have a sound model. I'm ready to go. No, they're not looking at your model. Catherine, what should folks be thinking about before they get the funding?
What you're going to do with it. I mean, I am always blown away by people that say, I need money into the business, and they don't have a plan for it, right? And so as an entrepreneur and you're bootstrapping and so forth, things can get tight, understandable, right? And so your natural thought process is, if I had more money, then I can do more, but what is the more? Right? And so the other thing is for you to think about, are you trying to get this money to cover expenses, or are you trying to get this money as an investment? Because they're two different things. So an employee mindset will say, I need to cover expenses, but you are the CEO of your business. And so a CEO mindset will tell you that I need to take this money to do something that's going to bring in more money. So anytime, in my opinion, and I think we can agree, but there may be some other opinions, but anytime you are trying to get funding, the funding is truly an investment. If you are trying to cover expenses, then you're looking at it wrong. And so I always say, plan for the money. If you say that you need $50,000, then how are you going to spend $50,000? You need to be able to say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to, invest here, I'm going to hire or whatnot, and you should be able to calculate what that $50,000 is going to return to you from an investment perspective. So please don't go seeking money because you feel like it's tight, right? You're going from left pocket to right pocket, and you just like, I need a break. That's not why you get funding. You get funding to invest so that you can take that money and have it make more money for you.
Amen right there. Shannon, would you like to piggyback on anything there?
I would, because I agree with that, and I think it may be a little nuanced, because sometimes when you're looking to cover expenses, one of two things, right? You are covering expenses, which really translates into covering losses, and the banks will see that, right? We run the numbers and we can see that basically we're funding losses with our debt, and the banks won't cover that. So that's the first thing. But the second thing, you can cover expenses and still be generating revenue. Think about contracting, right? Banks will give you working capital lines of credit to cover the bridge between when you get paid and when you have to pay out, right? So that float between your receivables and your payables. So effectively, yes, you're covering expenses, but it allows you to take on those contracts. So that's the revenue piece. So that's the investment. And so that's how we're able to turn that ask into additional investment and into additional revenue. We're also a micro lender and have been a micro lender for years, but we offer low dollar amount loans because we know that not everyone needs the $250, not everyone needs the $500,000. Some folks just need mobilization capital. They need the $15,000, but they need the $15,000 without a whole lot of strings attached. They need the $15,000 with a grant attached to it that says, if you repay all this money, I'll give you a grant at the end of it as an incentive, right? And I can use that grant to help cover some of your payments if you can't, because we do know that the path of the entrepreneur sometimes gets a little messy. And that monthly payment,
Real messy.
if someone doesn't pay you, then you can't pay us. But guess what? Now we have this cushion that we can pull from to help cover those payments. But it also means we got that technical assistance to help you get back on track, to help you figure out how we can avoid that happening the next month and the month after that. So I think this is where understanding how to use the money, but also making sure that you have those safeguards in place and that you're communicating what your needs are to your banker. Because you're right, they'll fund a mess, and then 12 months later, okay, so what's going on? And when you haven't met any of the metrics that they've put in place, well, now it's a problem. Now you're on a shorter time frame. Now we can start charging you higher interest rates. Now we can say, well, we don't want to lend to this type of borrower anymore because it's high risk. That's where the high risk conversation starts to come in. But if you're able to have these conversations up front with your lender to say, this is what I want, these are the parameters, this is how I'm paid, this is how my revenue comes in, these are my expenses and how I'm able to cover my expenses, what can you do for me, how do we structure something, that's a completely different conversation.
Camille, you got this, like, put me in, coach. Look, let me let you go ahead.
One thing that I would also say is when you're starting to move into entrepreneurship, make sure before you go to the bank, you have a very solid, tight business plan. And a lot of people say, well, I don't know how to write a business plan, but there is a lot of really good information out there, even some is free. And you are so fortunate, and I'm going to say so blessed, because I'm also in the ministry, to live in this area because there's a lot of free information out there. Everyone who is an entrepreneur should be on a variety of listservs, including the Small Business Association. WAKIF has a wonderful, I've actually volunteered with some of their community events. They have counseling for startups before you even move into getting lending. So you really need to have a tight business plan. And there's a lot of, as I stated, information out there on how to write a great business plan. There are people lending their time on panels such as this to help you learn about how to write a business plan. So go to those events. Some are virtual, some are in person. Additionally, I am going to take, I guess I'll say, sort of a message from the former president of Morehouse College, Dr. Benjamin Elijah Mays. He had a wonderful poem called, I Only Have a Minute. So really work on your solid, what I like to call 60-second elevator speech. If you only had 60 seconds, in his poem he says, I only have a minute, only 60 seconds in it. And then at the end of the poem he says, but eternity is in it. And so what you want to really make sure is that if you met an angel investor or someone who worked for a bank or the CEO of WAKIF and you only had 60 seconds to tell them about your business that would lend itself to allowing you to get access to capital, how would you describe that business? So you really have to work on having a tight program and process so that you can attract capital. I think that something that we haven't really spoken about is the benefit of social media. It has helped people become multi-million-dollar businesses. Utilizing social media not only to promote your business, but also to connect with and network with other entrepreneurs and other businesses that have really soared and are doing really well and are in the 7, 8, and 9 figures and beyond, is a way to do that. Because as he stated with Shea Moisture, when they sold their business to Unilever, that entrepreneur is now investing in other businesses, okay? As I stated earlier, if you have the good corporate job, you may not want to start your own business, but you may see a business that you have the funds and the capital to invest in. But in order to get people to do that, you as the entrepreneur have to really work on and tighten your business plan. Get on these listservs, go to the various trainings, get connected into those communities. There are a lot of support groups. And those are the ways then when you do go to the banks, the credit unions, and WAKIF and other community investment organizations, when you walk in there, you have your purpose, you have your plan, and you have the promise of how your business is going to be a benefit to the community that you serve.
Really good. Let's hear it for that. When Shea Butter, when they sold, they leveraged the old way of driving business and the old funding formulas. Well, things are changing. Since you have the mic, Camille, I'm wondering if you can share kind of what the landscape might look like 2-3 years from now, because these $100 million businesses in here that aren't there just yet are going to be incurring and interfacing with these new realities of capital.
I'll speak first on, as we've all been hearing in the news, the issue of tariffs. I think as you're moving into whatever type of business you're starting, factoring those kinds of expenses in is going to be important. Now, we don't know in 2 to 3 years how much of an issue that will be, because we're sort of on the ship right now and we're navigating the murky waters of it, but you will need to factor that in, because you may have a great business, but if you were getting materials or things like that from another country, let's say from China, now that expense is going to have to be a part of your budget. It's going to have to be a budget line item. Additionally, you will have to factor in time, because with the tariffs, that has also caused delays in shipping. So if you are a business that has any type of physical materials, you need to think about that. However, I always believe with an obstacle presents an opportunity. So that's also an opportunity. One of the things I think every entrepreneur should understand is, and be able to explain, is how their business is going to solve a need or a problem for people. So while there are tariffs, and that is going to make shipping issues more challenging for materials, it also presents an opportunity for people to become entrepreneurs to provide those materials and to then solve the problems for other people. So that's one way as we think about access not only to capital, but to opportunity to create businesses that will solve problems. I think another issue, as was discussed earlier, is it is going to become a little more challenging to get some of the lending and the loans from banks, from the Small Business Administration, and also from some of the community organizations. However, that doesn't mean you can't still do it, but it does mean beginning to think about alternative ways, so getting more potentially angel investors at the beginning and working through that period, then maybe going to get a loan at a later time. And thinking about what you can do on your own is also a way. Again, social media becomes a really great tool right now. Now, that is also potentially going to change, because we know some of the laws, privacy laws are changing, and what we can do. For instance, TikTok, as some of you know, for a period of time was taken off. You couldn't even use it, but now people can. So utilizing the resources that you have is going to be important. But again, don't take the obstacle and feel like you can't start a business or continue your business. It is an obstacle, but obstacles are like hurdles, and I was a former track runner and a former dancer. You just jump over them and you find other ways. So again, thinking about different ways of getting capital, promoting your business as you're starting it, getting connected to community, getting connected to access to capital. There are still a lot of programs for entrepreneurs where companies will take you in something like a localized version of Shark Tank, where you can come in and they will help you, and they will, in many cases, want a percentage of your business, or they will want their money back. So those pods and organizations and cohorts are still going on. Those are other ways to get access to capital.
Good answer. Love that answer. When I'm coaching my businesses, one of the things I tell them, I say, you know that you're ready to go talk to the marketplace when you've paid your bail money. When you've paid your bail money. When you have your banker. When you have your accountant. When you have your insurance agent. And you have your lawyer. Do you have your bail money in place? That will help you know whether or not you're ready to go into the marketplace. They also mentioned solving a problem. Many of my business owners that don't look like us go to the marketplace, see a big problem, figure out how they can solve it, create a business, then go back and start addressing that market. Most of my businesses that look like me have a job, somebody that made them mad, they good at what they do, people been telling them they should do it on their own, so then they jump out here, they sell the 19 people they know, so they think they have a business. When they meet the 20th person and the 25th person and the 38th and the 59th person that doesn't buy, they think there's something wrong with them. We have to do our research to make sure the problem we solve is big enough so we can make the $100 million, right? And one of the ways you can do that, because it looks like some people are taking notes, is to fill in this formula. You ready? I help insert the buyer, whoever that buyer is, that have this problem, insert whatever problem you solve, so that they can get, insert the desired result that they want. If you can answer that for somebody, more than likely, if the somebody has that problem and they want that desired result, and it looks like you can take me there, you're probably talking to a prospect, somebody who might give you money. We have some very smart folks on the stage. I'm going to break from the script. We're going rogue. My suspicion is that you also have some just, man, I always see this. Can you all, starting with you, I'm going to start with Camille on this side. Can you give me something that you always see that just, if there's nothing else they leave with today, please, Lord, don't do this.
If I had to choose something, I would say, again, tightening up your sort of 60-second elevator speech. I've met people and they have a multitude and a plethora of skills, and that's wonderful. But for instance, I always tell people, I'm an attorney. You don't come to me the way you would go to a dentist. You don't come to me to do your root canal, right? Because I don't have the skill to do that. So when you are going to potential investors or banks, making sure that you understand what they can offer you and then seeking that and connecting in that way. So if you are going to an accountant, you don't utilize an accountant the same way that you utilize an attorney. Or if you have a business and you're speaking about it, then focus on that. Don't start speaking about, all of the other things you're doing that has nothing to do with your business or how your business will resolve or solve a problem or an obstacle. So making sure that you stay focused, as they say, staying in the lane of where you are. If you're on the highway, you drive a certain way. If you're on a rural road, you drive a different way. So really making sure that you're driving your messaging, your business, and your business plan to the appropriate audience in the appropriate way. I think that's something that I see a lot. People will come and they'll just have a smorgasbord of things that they want to share, and I try to help them fine-tune that. So fine-tuning your, what is your business at the end of the day, and who are you speaking to, and how can they help you further solve a problem?
Catherine, same question, and we're going to get to the Q&A because I can see folks are ready to ask some questions. So maybe 1 minute from each of you, that same question.
So I'm going to say something that is probably non-traditional. Money is a mindset. How you do one thing is how you do all things. So if you think that you're going to become a business owner and those habits that you have and the way that you think is not going to show up in those rooms, yes, they are. And so part of the transition into being a business owner or scaling your business is to truly understand that you have to change your mindset. If you have a scarcity mindset, then you need to figure out what you need to do to be able to think in abundance, because if you only think that you can earn $100,000, and that's what you only are going to earn, right? If you have a trusting or lack of trust, it's going to show up in those same rooms. And so a lot of times it's not the fact that you can't make the money. It's not the fact that you don't have the service or the product or whatnot. It's the fact that you are trapped in your mind and you're telling yourself all of the things that you can't do. You're telling yourself all of the tables that you can't sit at. And that's truly the issue. A lot of times when it comes to funding, it's simply because you are talking yourself out of quote unquote being ready. You're talking yourself out of the opportunity. You're telling yourself you can't before you even try. You've made up this whole narrative based off of your experience previous to that. So I just have to say, really think about the mindset part of it, because money is the last thing to come. You have to be visible. You talked about social media. Some of us won't even hold up a camera. We don't like how we talk. We don't, oh my goodness, I don't have eyebrows. I don't have eyelashes, but okay, right? But people can't pay you if they can't find you. And that's one of the many examples that we go through. So really understand your mindset and understand that at every evolution, you need a new mindset. It's a forever changing thing for us, and you really have to invest in that process. And of course, there are no emotions in data. So one of the ways to get out your way is to have the data. The data will tell you what you need to know. The data will make the decisions, and you have to lean on that.
Thank you. Without doubt, get a lawyer. That's my advice. If you are accepting any funding, I don't care if it's your mama. If you are accepting any funding, have an agreement in place that's written by a third party. It's not about a lack of trust. It's just business. Things change, memories fade. Things oftentimes get kind of little messy, especially when things are tough at the beginning of a business. So have a firm agreement. Have a firm agreement that protects yourself. Have a firm agreement that's fair to your investors, and have that signed by all parties and agreed to by all parties. That would be my advice.
So I'm going to agree with everything that was said and add something else. We talked a lot about social media and how social media can be a benefit to your business. Social media can also lead you down the wrong path. There are a lot of folks out here on social media giving advice that is not advice. Some of this advice could potentially get you in trouble with the IRS. Some of this advice is just plain wrong. So there's someone on the internet that is telling folks that all you need is an EIN, and the banks are supposed to give you money. That is incorrect. I'm telling you right now, all you need is a business account and an EIN, and the banks are supposed to give you money. That is also incorrect. Any financial institution, and I use that word loosely, that gives you money based on an EIN and a business account is also going to charge you 30% interest. If you're lucky, 30, 40, 50, 60% interest. And then 2 years later, you're going to come to me and ask me to refinance this debt because I see it every day, every day. Be careful who you trust. Be careful of these influencers, maybe I guess they're called finfluencers, or folks that are giving this advice. It isn't always rooted in fact, in truth. It is designed to, it's the clickbait, it's the stuff that pulls you in, but it can get you in a lot of trouble. But we see these folks all the time. They come to us like, well, I got my EIN, where's my money? That's not how it works. There's still a process. There's still underwriting. There's still the evaluation, all the things that we've been talking about on this stage, understanding your business. So I know it sounds easy, but anything that's that easy is going to lead to destruction, serious destruction. I'll give you just a quick example. Just refinanced someone out of one of these predatory loans, took their debt service, their monthly debt service from $25,000 down to $7,000. But imagine paying $25,000 a month, right? And you took that investment to increase your revenue, because that was the whole point, increase the revenue. But you increased it, yeah. But you also increased on the expense side. So now you're not realizing any of that cash flow, any of that profitability. All you're doing is paying interest. So be careful who you trust on social media.
I think the panel would probably also agree, if you get a text message that says, if you reply to this text message, we have pre-qualified you for $100,000. Did you want us to deposit that today, or? I don't know that I wouldn't take that. Don't follow that text message. Don't follow that text message. Okay, panelists, we are now going to get to some of the questions in the audience. One that I see a recurring theme on is, if you're in the service or consulting business, how do you show scalability in order to qualify for funding? Better funding, bigger funding.
I can take that. So I think the first thing is to understand what scale means, right? Because scale is going to mean something different for a lot of people. Scale could mean profitability. Scale could mean growing your employees. Scale could mean moving into a brick and mortar. So I think the first question is, what does scale mean to the entrepreneur? And scale may change over time, right? You may have dreams of, okay, I'm going to start this thing, it's going to be home-based business, and then I'm going to move into my own space and start taking clients in this space. That shifts. I mean, look at what's happened in this environment where, office space now, folks aren't going into offices, people are working remotely, people are doing things in environments that don't require them to be in a physical location. So I think that's the first thing, understanding what scale means. Once you understand what scale means, then putting a plan behind that. So if the scale is to increase profitability, going back to showing how the investment is going to help you increase your profitability. If scale means hiring more employees, what is the plan to hire more employees, and what are these employees going to be doing? If the scale is to actually move into a physical location, how are you going to cover your rent? How are you going to cover your utilities? What type of space? Is there foot traffic? How are you attracting clients to the business? So it just depends on, from our perspective, what scale means to that small business owner.
I want to add something really quick to that. Great answer. With consulting services, kind of the fear of many funders is that a consulting service can end in 3 months, or the client has the ability to say, oh, we ran out of money, we don't want to do this. So as these consulting services scale, one of the things I've seen them do is get contracts. Say have a long-term agreement. We have a 6-month agreement with this client, a 12-month agreement with this client, a 24-month agreement with this client. So on paper, year 1, year 2, whatever year you're in, you don't see necessarily the high revenue. But if you can go into a lender or a funder and say, hey, but this contract lasts for 24 months and I'm working on a couple more behind that, that gives you kind of the scalable growth that a lot of funders are looking for in something that's is a consulting, quote unquote, type service. Those long-term guaranteed contracts, if you can negotiate that, I would strongly recommend it.
Can I also add to that?
Please.
So I know that there are newer business owners, so I do want to clarify the difference between growing a business and scaling a business, because sometimes people think that it's the same. So when you're growing a business, you're figuring it out, what works, what doesn't work. You have expenses that are tied to how you make money, right, and in the same ratio, right? So you take on more, you're spending more. Once you, I don't want to say perfect, that's not the word, but once you get in a season where you see that what you're doing is working, especially from a consulting and a service perspective, and you start scaling, what happens is your revenue will increase, but your expenses won't increase at the same ratio, right? And so you'll be able to start increasing your revenue and at minimal effort of increasing your expenses. And that's what scale means. So with that, one of the things that I always say is understand your numbers, right? So from a service or a consulting base, like, what is your lead? How many people do you need to get in front of, right, to then have a conversation, to then be able to sign a contract? Once you understand that conversion, it's just a numbers game, right? It's a numbers game, because now you know that 20% of the people that I get in front of, I can close. And so scalability is showing how you can now get in front of more people to be able to close and have that revenue.
In my session later, we definitely were going to talk about growth versus scale. Because of what you're hearing around the challenges that were challenges for funding now, or potentially even more, I've been convicted to, probably in 2026, I am no longer going to tell any minority business they should be trying to grow. I'm going to take that word right out my mouth. You should be trying to scale. And as an example, is there any hairdressers in here? If there was a hairdresser and they raised their hand, they would say, in order for me to grow, I have to do more than what I can do. So I get another hairdresser, get another chair, and if I want to get more than this, I have to open another facility, get more chairs. That's growth. Scale would be, I have a chair, I do hair, but I'm also selling hair care products online. I also open up a new service called, Total Me, which means for $89 a month, you can just schedule and come on through as much as you want. Get a blowout every other week if you want. Same person, same building, same resource, more money. Next question really revolves around something from my childhood. Raise your hand if you remember a guy in a white suit running around the Capitol with question marks, green question marks all over him. You can get money to start a coffee shop. You can get money to fix your car in your own garage. You can, grants for this, grants for that. Did anyone get one of them grants? Did anybody buy the book? Because I think he was selling the book. Are there I've thought about starting a business. There's a grant for me. There's funding for me. Somebody's waiting for me to say I want to start a business. They got money for me. Does this exist?
So look, there are grants. We didn't receive any grants. All right, I want to be clear with that. But there are grants available to organizations. Like I said, the National Black MBA Association comes to mind, the NAACP comes to mind. But a lot of the grants, if they're sizable, often are a part of some sort of pitch competition or some sort of situation where you have to put together some sort of deck, get involved with a group, a competition, if you will, to get them. So there's stuff out there that the angel investors, like I said, that has been growing their network last 5-6 years, definitely since COVID, would probably be the cleanest avenue if you're going there. But I think one of the big myths that happens that I hear a lot is this concept of, I don't want to use the term easy, but there's like these clear paths for specific minorities for grants for their business. It's a little wavy. There's stuff out there, but it's a little bit detailed, it's a little bit wavy. I do suggest going to organizations that are community-based to give you a lot more insights to that. But normally what I've seen from the grant game is that either it's tied to some money that's on the back end of a service, or is tied to some sort of competition, some sort of pitch, some sort of agreed upon study that you have to do.
Yeah, I would say the same. So the grants that we've offered have been tied to specific accelerators. So we'll do cohorts, and then at the end of the cohort, if you successfully come through, there's a grant. It's not large, it's small grants. Some of our grants are tied to lending products now, but we're not funding startups. There are organizations that fund startups, that provide grants for startups, but that's not one of the things that we do at our organization. But there are pitch competitions depending on where you are. I think Prince George's County had one. They do a lot of them in DC through DSLBD. If you're in the city, I participated in one where they do this Battle of the Wards. And so those opportunities are out there. One thing that I'll say about grants though, eventually the grant runs out. And so making sure you have a plan post-grant, because that money is great, and so it's $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, at one clip that you don't have to pay back. You may have to pay taxes on it, but you don't have to pay the grant back. But once that grant is over, then what happens? What's the next step for the business?
One more question, if we can be quick. We're trying to be done by noon. In this room, potentially some people own their houses. Is that a potential startup path, doing a home equity loan? And if you get declined, what should you do? Especially if you got like an 850 credit score or something. That's one of the questions.
I don't like that. Me personally, I don't like that, right? But that's me. For some people, it's something that they can do. Matter of fact, a person in my family that will go unnamed, we got into an argument about it, but he's decided to do that, to buy some real estate. But But you have to look at your own personal situation. Now, let's get to the nuts and bolts of this. A lot of people who either bought during COVID or slightly after COVID or refinanced during that time, you're never going to see that interest rate again. So if you refinance, you're going to be giving up 3-4 points on your mortgage, right? So you may get 6 figures back, but your monthly payment will increase significantly. So I would definitely, consider where you are in your interest payment, how much you owe on your home, and see if the ROI is worth it. Off the bat, though, it's not something that I would recommend.
I'm going to second that, and but I have a really a reason why. The number one way or number one path towards wealth creation is what? Home ownership. Number 2, small business ownership. And so if you have a home and you have accumulated equity in that home and you are building wealth through that home, you are creating wealth for you, for your family, for future generations. If there's enough equity in the home and you want to tap into that, okay. But when we know that not every small business is going to succeed, not every small business is going to be the pathway to wealth creation, it's a huge risk. It is a huge risk to take. And one of the things that we do at Wake, if we don't take collateral for any of our loans, because we don't want to have folks tapping into assets that, either assets that don't have a lot of equity, where they're trying to build that equity, or asking them for assets that they don't have. So it really depends on you and your personal situation, but it's not something that I'm a huge fan of.
And with that, Shannon, Shamari, Camille, and Catherine, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been fun.